All right. Well, first, let me introduce myself and give you a little bit of information about me. So, my name is Tom LaFalce here at Cornell. I am the director of data and strategy for our annual fund, and really excited to have you all here. And hopefully, these sessions will be of interest to you. I'd encourage you to encourage your colleagues to also join these sessions as well. We are going to record our session today with Jenny from the University of Pennsylvania talking about leading from where you are in annual giving. A few housekeeping items before we get started. First, I would encourage you to turn your camera on. That often makes these sessions feel a little bit more interactive, and we encourage you to do that. If you haven't done so yet, to please consider updating your name to include your institution name by just hovering over your picture and clicking the three dots, and you can rename yourself and add where you're from so that we can get to know each other. And I would encourage you to look for opportunities throughout our time together in the next 2 days to connect with colleagues that may have information you're looking for or interests you share, because that's really what the value of this really all is. I wanted to just say that before turning it over to Jenny, I think this is a really timely topic. As we talked about in the keynote, this is an interesting time for higher education. I know a lot of our organizations are looking at how we're staffed and how we're structured. I know at Cornell, we are very much going through that right now, including that I had to think about what my job title is because it was a little bit different as of 3 weeks ago, although my work hasn't really changed significantly. So I hope you find this an interesting conversation. Feel free to use the chat to ask questions. I'll be monitoring that throughout. And we really look forward to having a good conversation with you today about how we can all help make a difference in annual giving. So I'll turn it over to Jenny to talk a little bit and share with us her perspective. Jenny.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciated. I just wanted to give you a little bit background on who I am and how long I've been in the industry, although I am very aware that it puts a date on my age, but we don't need to talk about that. But I was born and raised in New Orleans and graduated from Tulane University. And upon graduation, I actually was a student worker in their alumni office. But upon graduation, I had my first job in their alumni office, but saw the fundraising side of things and was keenly interested in what was happening sort of on the other side of the road. Long story short, I was at Tulane for almost 20 years, left there as the director of annual giving, where I was recruited to Penn State, and I was at Penn State for 8.5 years. And now, so happy to say, I am now the assistant vice president for annual giving at Penn. I've been here a little over a year, and I love it. That's all I can say is I love it. I have an amazing team of people around me, and I see leaders all around me. So I'm happy to talk a little bit about what I mean about being a leader and how you can do it from where you are, because leadership is definitely not a title. So I also just wanted to share, this can be really informal. If you have questions, you can absolutely put it in the chat, but you can also just interrupt me and ask a question, and I'll try to pause to give people opportunities to just have a conversation about about this topic. So I am going to share my screen. Hopefully I do it right this time. Let's see. Tom, does everything look okay?
Everything looks great. You're ready to go.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So again, leading from where you are in annual giving. And this is something I'm really passionate about because leadership and management are two totally different things, and in my perspective and in many people's perspective. Um, Management means you have people reporting to you through boxes on an org chart, but leadership is a choice. And I'll explain a little bit more about what I mean when I say that. I did want to give you just a quick agenda. We'll talk about, again, leadership is a choice, not a title. Leadership in everyday work, reaction versus intentional responses, trust, ethics, and mission, the reflection, and then a call to action, and then certainly questions and discussions. But again, you can stop me at any time. Happy to answer any questions. So leadership actually lives everywhere. And we are, as Tom mentioned, we're in fascinating times in higher education where things are not business as usual anymore. And why this is such an important topic for you to show your leadership, no matter what role you're in, to not only help you advance your own position or responsibilities or job, but to be a leader in the annual giving space. So leadership is not limited to our managers, our directors. Every single role plays a part in shaping the donor experience, which we'll talk about that donor experience in a few minutes. But whether that's from gift processing to acknowledgments or internal collaboration, which is also extremely important, our donors don't experience our org chart. They don't know what it says on the org chart. As much as we think they understand the difference between offices and titles, they don't know. But how we show up and how we interact with each other is what shows. Annual giving succeeds with one daily interaction at a time. Again, I will share more as we go through. What leadership really is, again, leadership is your influence, not your authority. It's not, again, people on an org chart, but is your influence within your organization and outside of your organization. Leadership is action in your position. It's taking responsibilities for impact. It is making sure the donor experience is following what we'll talk about in a few minutes, the donor bill of rights. It is our job and our responsibility to ensure that we are following the donor bill of rights. We owe that to our donor. So what do I mean when I say leading from where you are? It means acting with intention, even when your work might be behind the scenes. Maybe you're not front, as I say, front facing, donor facing. It means modeling the behavior you want to see in others. And it's about forming culture that you want to see around you. So you model those behaviors, the behaviors you want to see in response. So if you think and feel that the best way to build culture on your team is by being supportive, then you need to be supportive to the team members around you. So it really is like sort of everything your parents taught you growing up. Treat others like you want to be treated. But I'll share a few examples in a minute, and we can talk about them. So leadership starts internally. It's the mindset, it's assumptions and how it influences our reactions, awareness that creates a choice. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So you may have joined this webinar today thinking you didn't have a superpower. I'm here to tell you, you all have an amazing superpower. And it's how you harness this superpower and how you use this superpower. I think we all probably have someone in our lives who is probably right 99% of the time, but the way they deliver the message makes them wrong 99% of the time. So sometimes it's in the delivery. And so we can't control others, but we can control how we react. We can control how we respond to an email. We can also give credit to others. Early on in my career, I remember one of my leaders, because they were more than just a manager, they were a leader. They said, Jenny, credit isn't a pie. If you give a piece out, that doesn't mean there's one piece less. credit can be never ending. It's never ending pie that we can share all around. And I think that that is really important in what we do and giving credit to those around us. Again, not because you're the leader on an org chart, but because you want to give some credit to the person next to you that they did a great job. So if you leave with anything today, I want you to remember you have a superpower in annual giving, and that's controlling how you respond to what I have to say in the last few years have been some trying times as an industry. This is probably the most pressure and stress I've seen on our industry in 30 plus years. And how we respond to that is noticed by those around us. And I actually think that you'll feel much better when you can control how you're responding, whether it's internally or externally. And I know that those can be quite different, but again, hone that superpower. So I talk a good bit about assuming positive intent. I say it's a small but powerful leadership choice. So if someone sends you an email and you've received emails from this person before that maybe weren't the nicest or the kindest emails in the world, and we all have a colleague like that or a family member like that where we're like bracing ourselves before we open the email or listen to the voicemail. But what if we decided to face that with reading or listening to it with positive intent? You would be amazed what can happen. It sounds so simple and so easy. And why I didn't learn this earlier on, it really would have benefited me throughout my career to not take things personally, to assume that someone has a positive intent, even, and this is the hard part, even if they actually don't have a positive intention. So that is a tricky one, but I'll talk about that in a minute too. So I do want to give you a real life example. Again, this is one of those emails. I want you to read it really quickly, and then I want you to read it again, maybe a little slower, but with positive intent to it. Are we safe to go on, or do you need another minute? Good? Okay. So, when we look at this email, if you just read it because you're expecting it to be not kind, not nice, you could definitely get that thread through this. But if you read it with, they're just stating the obvious, they're just stating something that's happening. If they're going through something, let them go through whatever it is, but that doesn't need to ruin my day or reflect negatively on me. Um, we really have two choices, maybe even three or four choices in how we respond to this. What if I told you, and this doesn't matter, but what if I told you this particular gift officer was having a really tough time with their metrics? They were being questioned on some of the steps in their process. Again, that's not a reason to send an email. That's not kind, but maybe there's another story behind this. But we really have some choices here. We can do the reaction, which sounds like defensive, maybe dismissive. Maybe you want to prove that you're right. These are all the feelings that you get in an email like this. But it shuts down the dialogue, it escalates the tension, and it erodes trust. And what do we need in annual giving with our colleagues and with our donors? we need trust. These aren't short-term relationships. These are long-term relationships that we need to cultivate because we're not perfect and we are going to make some mistakes in annual giving. And if we have the trust from our colleagues, that goes a long way. So, what if we decided to thank them for raising this, for flagging this concern, and say, I feel how I can see how this might feel misaligned with what we talked about. So, what if you just start opening it up for dialogue? This I might actually be a time where I would call someone because I think sometimes so much is lost in translation that I do still love to talk to people. Or I will say the prickliest person, and they're not at Penn, so this is a good thing, but the prickliest person I ever encountered, I actually asked to go get coffee. And I thought, what am I doing to myself? Well, fast forward 7 years, and we were supportive, aligned colleagues. I'm not saying that can happen with everyone, but I'm just saying doing that olive branch or reaching out. The reason I say it's so important to build trust, particularly in annual giving, because we do make mistakes. We do sometimes include someone who might not have uh, maybe shouldn't have been included on a mailing or an email, or maybe we did some outreach to someone who was assigned. Who knows what can happen? We try to not make mistakes, absolutely, but we know we're not perfect. But if you have a relationship of trust built with your colleagues, it can move mountains. I will also say, please don't be the colleague sending the email that is causing another group to pause and say, did they mean that to sound ugly? Was that doesn't sound right. So don't be that colleague either. Just think about what you're sending, particularly in email or in Teams. But you do have a choice. Again, it's your superpower to decide what direction do you want to go in. Build trust, or you can shut down the dialogue and prove that you're right. But that is a very short-term decision. Here is some explanation around the types of responses. Again, emotion-driven, defensive, versus a repeated reactive response. Um, Leadership really is a mindset. Again, it's not the title, it's how you reflect yourself and your organization, and also how you align values. Leading from where you are at the heart is rooted in trust. Donors trust us with their hard earned money. Ethical fundraising isn't just the organization's responsibility. It's actually all of our responsibility. We're all working under the donor bill of rights. And leadership does show up in our daily choices. And this one is so key. Ethics aren't optional. It is required in what we do. And I can tell you, sometimes some of the things that we're making decisions over are really hard. But ethics have to rule the day. So trust, super important in all that we do, fundamental at the heart, however you want to phrase it. We've got to be trustworthy to our fellow colleagues and to our donors. So this is what I referenced, the Donor Bill of Rights. This was created by several leading organizations, as you can see at the top. I share this with my team, no matter where I am, once a year. I think it is important enough to share this with your team. I can make it a little bigger. Sharing this with your team to remind us what we're working under. What are the guidelines? What are the principles? And when you can root some of your requests, some of your all right, I'll give you an example. At a university where we had some funding challenges, we were being asked to cut certain positions, one of which was in gift processing. and stewardship. And I brought out the donor bill of rights because we owe it to our donors to give them timely responses, appropriate acknowledgments, recognition. This isn't optional. We can't just have people out there asking for money. We've got to have the people in the back of the house too, who, for, number five, to receive appropriate acknowledgement and recognition. So there are pieces in here that you can use not only in your case for whether it's support for a new team member or a different way to look at things, but I do think it's so important that we review this at least once a year. It just makes me always stop and pause. Are we hitting all of these? Are we doing what is owed to our donors? Again, they are giving us their hard-earned money. So this is what we owe them in return. So share it with your teams yearly, however often you want to share it. But I do think it is really good when we're doing goal setting and as we're looking at things moving forward. The last one, a donor is to feel free to ask questions when making a donation and receive the prompt, truthful, and forthright answer. Are we doing that? I mean, you just have to ask yourself that as an organization, are we following through with all of these? I'm going to pause for a moment to see if anyone has any questions, comments, would love to hear anything that you want to add. Any questions, Tom, from anyone?
We don't see anything in the chat, but if anyone has anything, you can either feel free to just unmute yourself or just raise your hand.
Thank you. So, what does leadership mean in the context of the Donor Bill of Rights? First one is we are to protect donor intent. So, what a donor is told they're giving to must be where their money goes. And we can sometimes, on the administrative side, have some weird things that are happening, but we need to make sure that whatever the donor gave to is where their money is going. We have to safeguard confidentiality. Again, really important in what we do. Some donors want to be anonymous. Some want their name everywhere. Um, whatever their wishes are, we need to be honoring those. We need to communicate honestly and clearly, and we have to be stewards of the trust, not just the dollars. I think that statement alone, it's not just the dollars, it's the trust that we're building with our constituents. It's really important to me that our donors feel like and know they are making a gift, their money is going where we're saying it's going, and that we're not in it for a one-time cash grab. This is a relationship built on trust. And quite often, as we all know, it starts in annual giving. When you look at your rate from someone giving their first gift to, say, a major gift or a planned gift, and you look at that first dollar amount and then the time it would take to get to that higher level, 9 times out of 10, or maybe even more than that, they started with an annual giving level gift. And how we treat them and steward them matters in not only in the moment because it's the right thing to do, but in the long run too. So another, showing you some more examples of the Donor Bill of Rights and how you as a leader, making sure there's accurate gift processing, timely acknowledgments, clear donor communication, and speaking up when something feels off. And I think that this can be one of the trickiest pieces in all of this. But to be leaders in annual giving, and if we see something that isn't upholding the Donor Bill of Rights, we need to tell someone. We need to tell in a diplomatic way and in a way of caring. But, oh, I noticed that we're not getting acknowledgments out for 2 months. That's probably too long. We need to, go back and look, and maybe acknowledgments need to be going out weekly or daily or whatever it might be. Feel free to bring these up in a supportive way to the people around you. And as a group together, you can make some movement on, again, just upholding what the donor's rights. are in annual giving, really in all of philanthropy. The next piece I wanted to talk about is leading from the heart of your organization. And what does that mean? We all know that every institution has a mission statement, a value statement. They have a number of different things that they consider pillars to the university. And quite often in what we do, I've noticed that we are building campaigns um, that maybe don't have the mission or the value or the pillars at the heart of what we're doing. And again, during goal setting time, it's important we go back and read, what is our mission statement? Do you have a mission statement for your annual giving team? You might have that too. But it's important enough to take the moment to stop and pause and say, is what we're doing advancing the university's mission? Because if we're misaligned, we need to do some alignment. Um, been again at three different universities, three different yet similar mission statements, but they all have their different flavor. They all have their different pieces that are different from other universities. But if we can align that with our messaging, it can be very powerful. So know your mission and know your values. Find your institution's mission statement, identify the core values, and understand what they mean in practice. And there will be some statements potentially in your core values and in your mission statement, and you're like, how the heck do we show that? How to understand what it means in practice? And don't be afraid to use Microsoft Copilot or Chat GPT. There are just different ways to try to make sense of some of these. Hopefully, they're not as complicated as some of the ones I've seen. But actually, let me go back to AI for a minute. You know how we had that email from someone that wasn't kind that we reviewed? You could, and I might have done it, put a note in Microsoft Copilot that said, can you help me respond to this letter and be collegial and yet explain some of the purpose behind this? And guess what? You get this beautifully written email that I encourage you to read, not just copy and paste. I encourage you to read. But we do have tools. If you're known for sending out emails that are snarky, I laugh because actually my mom, before she retired, she was known as the lady who sent out snarky emails. And we laugh because I'm like, Mom, if you were working in times like now, you could really tone down those emails. Anyway, that's a side topic. So going back to understanding what the values and the mission mean for annual giving. If you can make sure that they are aligned, you're going to get a more aligned product. You're going to get something that resonates with why everyone still loves and believes in your institution, because that is the core of your institution. So, how do you connect the mission to your daily work? What does that mean? And no, I'm not reading the mission statement every day as I roll out of bed, but it is, again, translating the purpose into action. How does your role support the mission? This can be tricky, but if you can identify what you do in your role, whether it's a data role, whether it's a frontline fundraising goal, it really can be impactful for yourself and those around you, for you to understand how you fit in the overall mission of the university. And then how do the values of the university show up in your donor interactions? I think that this piece is often forgotten as well. But if your university has a set of values that they hold really close, we need to be upholding those values in our donor interactions. And they also can help guide you through tough decisions. We have all been through a lot these last few years. And I think I shared this last year when I was doing a presentation for IB Plus. But I am unfortunately known for fundraising in difficult times. So I helped Tulane navigate Hurricane Katrina, where we actually had to let go 50% of the development team just to keep our doors open. I was recruited to Penn State because they were having a child sex abuse scandal. And they needed someone who could come in and motivate and keep a team laser focused on fundraising, but with empathy and compassion, because we can't do any of these without empathy and compassion. So these tough decisions often need to be rooted in something. So if we're rooted already in being good leaders, being good people, understanding what our mission is, understanding our values, and at the core, understanding what we owe our donors, it's powerful. We can truly move mountains when we are rooted in the right things in our work in annual giving. I share all of this with you because I really am passionate about raising more donors and dollars year over year. That I've done that throughout my career, but again, it has to be with compassion, not only for your donors, but for the people on your team. I could not ask for a better group of people to work with than I have here at Penn. And I know I'm very fortunate and very lucky. It doesn't always work out that way, that when you start a new position you just have really great people, but a truly amazing group. But they are rooted in values, they're rooted in mission, they understand the donor bill of rights. And so we face some challenges here, but again, rooted in what does that mean for our donors and for ourselves, it can be really powerful. So here we're talking about the mission, the ethics, and the alignment. So again, calm, thoughtful responses. Be the person who is known for calm, thoughtful responses. Again, you have the superpower. You didn't know you had it before you joined this webinar today, but you do have a superpower. We need to make ethical decisions. Again, eh, we don't have a choice. We have to make ethical decisions. We need to make donor centered choices, and we need to have positive influence on the people around us. We quite often are making decisions based on how we're counting things in annual giving. If we take a step back and look at this from the donor's perspective, what makes sense to the donor, regardless of what bucket a fund is falling under, or does it make sense to our donor? And we've got to adjust our internal practices to make sense of some of these. And so I really am passionate about donor centered choices as well, because if we're just using what's policies, procedures that are easier for us, that's not at the heart of what we should be doing as an annual giving team. So again, taking that step back and looking at it, if you had a donor here and a donor here, and his or her gift counted, but their gift didn't count it, and we can't explain why, well, then we need to take a step back and figure out what we're doing and how we can communicate that a bit better. So shared leadership is stronger, equals stronger teams. And that means that everyone on your team needs to be a leader so that leadership is distributed, not concentrated at one level, so that we're all instilling trust. We're all accountable for what we're doing. And it just creates a culture of strength when we all feel empowered to speak up, or we feel empowered to make a decision that maybe wasn't a popular one. I just think it makes for a healthier, stronger team. And it's amazing how the donor experience actually improves when you can have a team that all feels like they are leading from where they are. The donors sense and feel trust, confidence. It's an amazing shift. So let's look at this leading from where you are. How do you respond under pressure? And, I talk a lot about being your true, authentic self and being able to come into the office as your best self and not have to be someone you're not. But I also recognize I don't want the football watching self from Sunday afternoon necessarily walking through the door. So I just mean the best version of yourself. But how do you typically respond under pressure? And if you know that you don't respond well, that's half the battle. So maybe you give yourself a moment to process an email before you respond, or you say, I'm going to have to give you a call back, or let's set up a meeting for tomorrow. Know how you respond under pressure. I feel like after decades of doing this, I can respond under pressure really well. But I also find that if I give it a day, I might have a different view on something. So again, think about how you respond under pressure. We're all under pressure these days. And then think, where can I assume more positive intent? And it really is it's going to help you. You're going to feel better when you're just assuming positive intent. I was a glass is half empty person, but I had some things in my life that were pretty fundamental and have changed me to the glass is half full type of person. So I know it can be done. I wasn't there for a long time, but I'm there now. But if you can assume positive intention, you let that other person have whatever they're feeling. You will feel so much better at the end of the day if you just assume positive intent. Then I want you to think about, how does my work reflect my institution's mission? And these can be hard to answer, and I wouldn't be afraid to workshop this with your colleagues uh, as a group. What you're doing day to day, how does it impact your university's mission? And when you make that link, and you can and you will make the link, you can feel more like you're a part of this bigger picture, this bigger piece. Again, very rewarding work to be able to figure out how your work is impacting the mission. And then finally, how can I lead more intentionally? Like right now, what can you do to lead more intentionally? There are absolutely things that you can do right now to build up the culture of your team, build up the morale of the coworker next to you. Send an email to someone who really had a big impact on your career, and you just never did tell them that. Send them a note, let them know. There are just so many things that we can do intentionally. It requires, I have a note on my calendar every year to share the case and AFP donor bill of rights. I have a reminder on my calendar to send a thank you note every month to someone who had an impact on me. Am I 100% perfect at getting any of these or all of these done? No, but I'm trying my best. But again, leading with intention, there are definitely things that you can do now. They may seem small, but they build up to reflecting an annual giving team that has heart, that people trust, they want to turn to. If things aren't going the way they think they should be going, they want to give them a call and have a conversation. That is what annual teams deserve, and we can create that everywhere. So it does. It starts today. You have your superpower. You know that it is how you respond. That is the number one superpower, but you already have influence. You are influencing people around you. I didn't say it was necessarily positive. I hope it is, but you do already have influence. So remember that. Remember your actions, your communications have influence on those around you. Leadership is a choice, not a title. I can think back of some individuals who I worked with who may have had the least impressive title, but were leaders beyond belief. And it was because they instilled trust in other people. Remember, small actions create powerful examples, and then lead from where you are. I know we all want the next thing in our career. I understand that. I throughout my career, I wanted to say, all right, what's next? What's next? But if we can just lead from where we are in the moment, it can be really powerful for you and for those around you. All right, so I'll stop, I'll take a breath, and I will see any questions, any comments, anything anyone wants to share. Anyone see any leadership in action around you that maybe you didn't think was leadership, but now when you look at leadership under a different lens, you think of something that might come up?
Well, I just wanted to say, Jenny, thank you for taking the time to talk to us about this important topic. It's actually a topic we've been talking about with our team at Cornell as we go through some organizational changes, and that idea of building trust within the team and positive intent are two of the things we've put on that list of things that we believe as a team. I think they're really so important. So thanks for that reminder. If people have questions, you can either just feel free to raise your hand or feel free to use the chat to keep the conversation going.
And I also am free after this if anyone wants to shoot me an email, or I'm happy to chat with anyone anytime. And I do see a number of the team members from the Penn team on here, and that just sort of warms the heart. See familiar faces.
Well, I'll hop in and ask a question to get us started, I guess.
Sure.
I this idea of trust, I think it makes a lot of sense when you're talking about um, sort of the one-on-one interactions that we have. What's your perspective on how do we do that organizationally with people that we may never get to actually talk with one-on-one? Because I think that's a really important thing that we're all wrestling with is how do we build trust with our donor bases? And lots of those people we don't ever get the chance to actually have a conversation with.
It's really tough because in the annual giving space, when we're talking about broad-based appeals, we're not talking to these people individually. We're not able to connect one-on-one with many of our constituents. And especially in the annual giving space, when we meet with a donor, it might be the only time they've met with someone from the university, and it might be the only time they've ever met with someone, but always wanting people to feel important because they are in our interactions with them, leaving them feeling better than when we started the conversation. It being about them, their experiences at your university, it just is so important. I will say, though, for colleagues, and this was a lesson that it took me a little while to really learn. I remember at Tulane, we had these large division wide meetings, and I thought, oh my gosh, do I really have to go sit all day in this division wide? This was just the younger me talking. And then when I realized that if I made a little effort, because I am an introvert, believe it or not, I am, but if I made a little effort, that if I challenged myself to go find one person, just one, new, and introduce myself to them and have a conversation with them, I almost made it like a game for myself. Like, Jenny, I'm challenging you. You need to find one person this go round that, oh my gosh, that just amplified because then I met actually four more or five more or 10 more. And what I thought were just for them to gather a bunch of people together to talk at us was actually such a great opportunity to meet people from other areas that I then could say, oh, we met at the division quarterly. I'm hoping we can chat about XYZ. It was, again, a pretty powerful thing early on in my career that I think still helps advance, and I encourage it. Aaron, yeah.
Hey, thank you so much, Jenny. This has been a great session. I feel like I've learned so much. I'm curious if your thinking has evolved around all of these things that you've talked about pre-pandemic versus post-pandemic. I know our team, we have an anchor day. We're in the office and we do overlap with some internal colleagues, but it's certainly very different from the before times when we were all together. every day. So just would love to hear if you have any thoughts.
I hear you 100%. It is different and it is harder, but not impossible. We have an anchor day. We're here all here Wednesday. I love Wednesdays. I get so much energy from Wednesdays, but I also know how productive I am and how productive my team is when they are working remotely and can have some quiet. So it really it we're we're super productive. And I think part of that is being home. We're actually in the office twice a week, work remotely 3 days a week. If someone wants to work in the office every day, they're absolutely welcome. But it is different. And I think the intentionality has to be there. You have to say, oh, I'm going to have to go stop by so and so's office today because I haven't physically seen them in a month. I need to go see them. So just that intentionality behind who you're stopping to talk to is important. There are times on my calendar, my team doesn't know this, but you know it now, where it's held for no meetings, but that's so I can get up and go around and talk to people on Wednesdays when I'm here. Now you know, secret is out. But again, the intentionality of just being able to go see people. Anything else from anyone? Well, I so appreciate chatting with all of you today. Hopefully you'll take something out of the presentation today. I'm happy to share the slides as well. And I hope you all have a great rest of the conference.
Yeah, Jenny, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about this topic with us, and we really appreciate everyone else joining. Please, hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, and look forward to our paths crossing in the next couple of days. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good day.